All right, we are looking at the notes for the equation of a circle. And so we're going to start by looking at the center of the circle, which we are going to use the variables h and k to denote the h denoting the horizontal movement from the origin and k representing the vertical movement from the origin. We then, if we take and from there were to draw out a radius, there's our radius, and then we will be looking at a point that is on the line, and that point on the line is given the ordered pair xy. And so the general equation for creating a circle is to take the difference in the x value of the point on the circle and the vertex, and so that's going to give us x minus h, and that quantity is going to be squared. And in addition to that, then we're going to take the differences in the y value of the coordinate on the circle and the y value of the vertex, y minus k squared, and that is going to equal our radius squared. Okay. So that's something that if you have your note card going, you want to add to your note card. We're going to be using that quite often now, not just in this section, but in sections to come. All right, if we go ahead and let me push this up here, I'm going to look at example 1. Example 1 says, what is the center and radius of a circle given with the equation quantity x plus 18 squared plus the quantity of y minus 4 squared equals 54. So we want to find two things. We want to find the center as well as the radius. Okay, so I like to take this and to do this, that this is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared, and that equals r squared. So if I go to look at the center here, this x plus 18 came from x minus a negative 18, and that tells me that the h value of the center of the circle is going to be negative 18. The y minus 4 is the y minus the k value, and so our k value is just 4. So that's the center of our circle. We have now, for looking at this, we can see that 54 is r squared. So if r squared is 54, and we want to know what r is, then that's the square root of 54, which is 9 times 6, which is 3 radical 6. And so that then is the radius, 3 radical 6. So we were able to figure out the center of the circle and the radius of the circle just by looking at the equation of the circle. Okay, let me move this up and let's look at number 2. Number 2 says, write the equation of the circle whose center is negative 8, 15, so that is your h and k, and the radius is 3 times the square root of 11. So I'm going to start with my formula here, that this is x minus a negative 8. Well, that x minus a negative 8 is going to turn into x plus 8 plus y minus 15 squared is equal to 3 times the square root of 11, and that's the radius, and we have to square it. So this is going to remain the same, x plus 8 squared, y minus 15 squared, and then this 3 times the square root of 11 when we square that, 3 times the square root of 11 times 3 times the square root of 11 is going to give us 9 times the square root of 121, which is 9 times 11, which is 99. So equals 99. And so there is our equation for this circle. In example 3, we're asked to graph the circle. Now to do so, you have to understand the equation here. So when we look at this, this comes from x minus, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So if I look at this being x plus 5, I know that that comes from x minus a negative 5. So my h value is going to be negative 5. If I look at the k value here, this is y minus three. And so that tells me that the k value is 3. So I'm going to go to the center of the circle, which is negative 5, 3. And that's going to be a point right there. And then this is equal to r squared, which is 9. Well, if r squared is 9, that means that the radius is 3. So I'm going to come out and I'm going to do my, what we call our north, south, east, west points. So I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go down 3, south 3, 1, 2, 3. From the center, I'm going to go east 3, 1, 2, 3. And then west 3, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to take and draw my circle, which is why, especially for drawing freehand like I am here on the iPad, that you want to have those 4 points, the north, the south, the east, and the west, clearly marked off so we can see where those points are located. All right, if we look at the next page, we're going to be writing a tangent and a radius. So if we look at this, we want to be able to write the equation of the tangent line. So our end goal is we want to know what is the equation of this line right here. These are the steps that are going to help us to get there. So you either are going to need to commit them to memory or add them to your note card. So the first thing that we need to do is find the slope of the radius. So if we look at the slope of the radius, that is right here. And so we're just using our slope formula. We're going to do our change in y's, 1 minus a negative 2, over our change in x's, 6 minus 4 is 2. Is 3 over 2. Now, the next thing is that if we want to find the equation of this line, we just found the slope right here. Look at the relationship between this line and this line. Those lines are perpendicular. And so therefore, we are not going to use the slope of 3/2. We're going to use the perpendicular slope, which would be the opposite and reciprocal. So we're talking a negative 2/3. Now we're going to take the point that's given to us here, the point 6,1, and we're going to use that point and point slope form. So I'm using the point 6,1, and the fact that I just figured out the slope was a negative 2/3. And so I'm going to have y minus 1 is equal to a negative 2/3 times x minus 6. So that's our point slope form, but we know we very often leave our answers in point slope form. We usually take them to slope intercept form. And so we're going to solve this for y now. So I'm going to have y minus 1 equals, distribute here, negative 2/3 x, distribute here, that's going to give me 12/3, which is plus 4. And then I'm going to have to take this minus 1, move it to the other side by adding 1, and we have y equals negative 2/3 x plus 5. So that is the equation for the tangent line. All right, let's look at another one. This one, the steps are not written out for us, but we are going to do the exact same process. So we're going to take m, if we look at this, we're going to first find the slope here between the center of the circle and the point of tangency. This one, the center of the circle is at the origin, which makes this a little easier because we're just going to say that this is 5 minus 0 over negative 10 minus 0. That's going to give us a slope that is negative 1/2. But now keep in mind, we have just found this slope, and we are looking for the slope of this line. And since the blue is perpendicular to the yellow, we are going to use the slope that is perpendicular. So it has to be opposite sign. So this is negative, this will be positive. And if this is 1/2, the reciprocal will be 2/1. So that's the slope we're going to use. And then we're going to use that point, negative 10/5. And now we're going to use point slope form. So I'm going to have y minus 5 equals 2 times x minus a negative 10. And so I'm going to take and do the distributive property here. And then I'm going to add 5. And I'm going to end up with y equals 2x plus 25. Now that equation of the line is this line right here, the tangent line. Now let's kind of bring this all together and use some of these, what we've just been learning, to solve for x, okay? So you're going to see that we're pulling things from a couple of different sections right now. So if we look here, we are given that this angle here is 33. What we should know is that this angle here is going to be 90. And this angle here is going to be 90. And what I have here is a quadrilateral that equals 360. So therefore, when I take the 90 and the 90 and the 33, what I'm left with is 147 for this angle measure. Which means that if this is 147, then this must be 213. And then the arc that goes with this, which is x, must also be 213 degrees. All right, if we are looking at letter D, if this is 255, that means that this is 255. And I know the whole thing is 360, so this must be 105. And this are both 90. If I take 360 and subtract out 90 and subtract out 90 and subtract 105, then I will be left with 75. So x is 75 degrees. All right, we've got 3 more. If we're looking at letter E, if what we have here is that this is 106, and I know that together this is a linear pair here, that must be 180, then this must be 74. I should know that this has to be 90 degrees, and if this is 90 and this is 74, and I subtract that from 180 for triangle sum, that means that this has to be 16 degrees. All right, if we look at letter F, we are given that this is 83. We need to figure out what this measurement is, but we should know that both of these are 90 degrees. So if we start with 360, we subtract out 90, and we subtract out 90, and we subtract out 83, what we're going to be left with is 97 degrees for that X. And our last one here, if this is 15 degrees right here, and then we know that this has to be 90 degrees, and if we look at this triangle sum here, and if I take 180, subtract out my 90, subtract out my 15, then what I'm going to be left with is 75 here. And what that helps me get is that if this is 75 here, here's a linear pair, this one has to be 105. If that one is 105, then that's a central angle, and that means this X here is also going to be 105.